I'm curious, before you go on stage, whether it be at a local comedy store here in LA or at Madison Square Garden, do you have a negative voice that speaks to you that day, that hour before? If so, what is that negative voice? And do you combat it with anything, any tool or strategy or mantra or personal statement to support you to overcome that negativity before going on stage?
I don't have a negative voice prior to doing shows. My negative voice is with me daily, like on a daily basis.
Like, what's it sound like? What's the voice saying to you?
It's a variety of things. I mean, we were talking before this started of like, when's this going to end?
Mm-hmm.
Is this the last day? You know, anybody going to come to the show? Anybody going to buy tickets? Are you doing enough are you funny? Are you as funny as you were 5 years ago? Have I peaked? This is constant.
Every day.
Yeah.
Kind of a general.
It's a kind of a general like voice in my head that, are you spending enough time with your family? You know, what are you doing in Montana at a show when your kid's at a recital? And they're never going to be able to see that recital again. That's a one moment in time that's happening. Then you combat that voice with, my kids are seeing me work. And when they see that, they might emulate that when they get older. Like, Daddy was working. He wasn't sitting on the couch watching TV, eating popcorn all day. Sometimes I think kids, you know, they ape the behavior of their parents. So the fact that they're seeing their father and mother work, for me, is like, you're giving them a template of this is how, and I'm coming from where I come from in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, the Midwest. I grew up working middle class family. We went on one vacation a year. Mm-hmm. There was not a lot of abundance, but we were never starving. We were never, you know, our clothes were, you know, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, that type of deal. And I like the way I grew up. I like the way that my parents, you know, brought me up. Manners. You know, we went to the Chicago Bulls game to see Michael Jordan, but I was sitting in the obstructed view, trying
to look around
the
pillar.
pole.
Yeah.
So now I'm very conscious that my kids are growing up in a completely different environment, completely different city, seeing things that probably I've never seen as a kid. So my objective is always to tell my kids, you know, like, Daddy's working, but all fun things that we do, we wouldn't be able to do those things if Daddy didn't work. And you guys, a lot of people don't get to do these things, you know. So, you know, we go to Disneyland, and we had a guided tour once. I grew up at Disneyland. I was sitting in the line for 2.5 hours, right? Now, it's an interesting dynamic, because I work so hard to get to a place where I don't really have to stand in the line, because I don't want to stand in the line.
No.
Right? And if I have the opportunity to do this, to enjoy it, why wouldn't I? But then also, I'm also conscious of my kids. I don't want them to think that if they go to Disneyland with another family that doesn't have a guide, that family is looked as lesser than or what have you. So I'm constantly preaching to them these lessons, because very easily, and I seen it, like, people that hey, let's go to the front row of the game, and they don't explain to their kid that this isn't necessarily a normal thing for a lot of people in the world.
Sure.
So
yeah, man, it's tough. It's tricky.
Yeah, but I got to learn to enjoy these moments, because if I'm always pining over, are the kids going to grow up to be spoiled? You know, like, then it's like not fun.
Yeah, of course. I've heard you talk about money, how you struggled with money and how to spend it. And, you know, you didn't grow up with abundance, but you also didn't have a horrible childhood. But it sounds like there's still a mentality today. And I think you're 51, is that right?
We should do one in a couple of weeks, yeah.
51. It sounds like today that you're constantly thinking about, how do I earn more? How do I make more? How do I save more? I don't want this to end. Is it going to end someday? So I have to keep working to make more money. Are you able to enjoy your money that you're making? Or is it a constant anxious feeling around making money, having money, seeing it in the bank, seeing it leave, seeing it come? What is that psychologically for you?
Wish my wife was here. She's complete opposite. She's
the spender.
Well, she's not. She's like, let's enjoy ourselves rather than sit here and pine over the fact. Because you know what? You can do this, whatever business you're in, whether it be tech or you're running a pizza, whatever it is. You could always say, I'm going to work, and more money, more success. And by the time you're 80 and you're in a wheelchair and you're like, what the hell just happened? That's why we're talking about this book, Die With Zero. Like, what are we saving for? What is the main objective with this money in the bank? What are you doing with it? Are you going to start a charity foundation and pass it on to charity when you die? Pass it on to your kids? That's another thing. It's like, do you give your kids this type of money? And them knowing that, does that take away their motivation to do anything for themselves? I've seen this happen with a lot of wealthy families where the kids are coasting because they know, hey, look at that. And when he dies, I get this, or I got a trust fund, or what have you. So I just wish I could, and I'm getting better at it. I am getting better at it. But then also, too, I have no template for this. Like, I can't call my dad and go, Dad, when you had this, what did you do? You know, there's other people that I could maybe confide in, but also, too, you know, I've never been a guy that, like, money was something that you never talked about growing up. My father often said, don't you dare tell anybody what I make.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Very
and still,
hush.
to this day, I don't like to, like, you know, people go, oh, how much money do you make during the show? I'm not that guy. I don't flaunt what I have. I don't, you know, if I'm doing something that's kind of special, it's special, but it's special to me and my family. It's not necessarily special to social media. I'm not the one to grab my phone all the time and go, look where we're at. You know, it's just not who I am. I find that behavior a little gross and immature. But I am getting better at kind of letting loose. Not that I'm cheap. I'm not cheap. We do great things. But like, for example, like, going to remodel our house. Like, what's the extent of the remodel?
Yeah, you could go unlimited spend.
Yeah.
You could spend forever.
You know, do we get a new kitchen? Or like once you get the new kitchen, then you look at the other room. We've gone through this. Like, we just want to do something, and then it starts metastasizing throughout the house. And before you know it, it's like, we should have knocked down the house.